A few weeks ago, I found out that my parents had taken out an $80,000 loan in my name to pay for my sister Tia's second wedding. Honestly, I wasn't even that surprised. This kind of thing has been happening all my life. But when I first heard about it, I still could not believe it. Growing up, my parents, Trisha and Marshall, always treated my younger sister Tia like she could do no wrong. She was the golden child in their eyes. Meanwhile, I was the one who did everything by the book. I got good grades, helped around the house, and tried to keep out of trouble. But none of that seemed to matter much to my parents. They just focused on Tia. When Tia was 28, she got married to a guy named Ronald. I did not know Ronald well, but their relationship was already rocky before they even walked down the aisle. Still, my parents threw this huge, expensive wedding for them like it was a dream come true. I wasn't really involved in any of the planning, and it felt more like they were throwing a big party for themselves than actually celebrating Tia and Ronald. Of course, the marriage ended in a divorce 2 years later, and Tia went through a phase where she talked about finding herself and all of that. It wasn't a surprise, but it was tiring to hear about. Then, a few months ago, Tia told me she was engaged again. This time it was to Jim, a guy she met at a yoga retreat. My parents were beyond excited. They started planning the second wedding like it was going to be the event of the century. Once again, I wasn't invited to help with anything. The wedding was all about Tia and Jim, and that's when the financial trouble started. One day, my dad called me and asked if I'd seen the news about interest rates and loans. I did not think much of it until he told me that he and my mom had taken out an $80,000 loan to pay for Tia's wedding. And the worst part? They took out the loan in my name. At first, I did not believe it. How could they do that without asking me? But when I asked them about it, they just said that I owed them this. Apparently, everything they had done for me growing up, feeding me, sending me to school, the usual things, was worth less than the cost of one wedding. They actually said $80,000 was nothing in comparison to everything they had done for me. And to make it worse, they said I was expected to help them out because as their firstborn, it was my responsibility. The way they talked about it, you'd think I was supposed to just accept it without question. My dad kept saying how important it was for Tia's second wedding to be perfect because this time it was going to last forever. He was convinced that Jim was the right guy and they did not want anything to stand in the way of this dream wedding for their daughter. So they decided to use me and my name to make it happen. I could not believe what I was hearing. Why was I the one who had to pay for all of this? Tia was the one getting married again, not me. She had been married before and it did not work out. But now my parents were convinced that this time Jim was the one, and Tia deserved the perfect wedding. I did not even get to have a say in it. The worst part was that they did not even tell Tia about the loan. They said she did not need to know and it was easier to just take the money from me. I could not understand how they thought that was okay. They could have paid for the wedding themselves, but they chose to make me responsible instead, and they did not even seem to care about the effect this would have on me. When I tried to talk to Tia about it, she just brushed me off. She did not see the problem. She told me I was just overreacting and that I should just trust that everything would be fine. She kept telling me that this wedding was going to be different, that Jim was the one and that everything would work out. Meanwhile, she and my parents acted like this huge loan was no big deal. They did not seem to care about the consequences, and I was left to deal with it all. I was so angry. I had tried to be supportive all my life, but no matter what I did, it was never enough. It was always about what my sister needed and what my parents wanted for her. I was always expected to be the one who picked up the pieces when things went wrong, but now I was the one getting stuck with an $80,000 loan because they did not want to face the reality of their financial mistakes. I felt completely taken advantage of. I started looking into how I could get this loan off my name, but it wasn't easy. The more I researched, the more I realized just how deep I was in. My credit score was going to take a hit, and I was going to have to work hard to fix it. And even if I did manage to remove the loan, I could not forget that my parents had put me in this situation in the first place. They had decided that I owed them this, even though I hadn't asked for any of it. The wedding was set to be an extravagant affair, the kind my parents always dreamed of. Tia and Jim had rented out a stunning venue in the countryside, and everything was supposed to be perfect. My parents, of course, were involved in every little detail, making sure that no expense was spared. They even bragged about how much they were spending, like it was some kind of trophy for them to show off. Tia, on the other hand, was glowing with excitement, convinced that this marriage was going to be forever. It was like they had all forgotten what had happened the first time. The day of the wedding arrived, and I decided I wasn't going to let it get to me. After all, it was Tia's day, and I did not want to make a scene. But as I stood there watching her walk down the aisle in her beautiful dress, I could not shake the feeling that something wasn't right. My parents, Tricia and Marshall, were beaming with pride, acting like they had created the most perfect family. They smiled for the cameras, posed for pictures, and pretended everything was just as it should be. As the ceremony went on, I felt more and more like a stranger in my own family. It was hard to watch them all celebrate something that for me felt like a lie. I wasn't even sure why I had shown up in the first place, other than the fact that I felt like I had to be there. I was expected to be a part of the picture, the supportive sibling who went along with the whole charade, but all I could think about was how I was being financially exploited to make this day happen. The wedding reception was everything my parents had hoped for. Beautiful decor, an endless flow of champagne and laughter filling the air. I tried to keep my distance, sitting at a table in the back watching everything unfold. I wasn't going to ruin it for Tia, but I wasn't going to pretend like everything was fine either. As the evening wore on, I began to feel the pressure building. I was still furious about the loan, still angry that my parents had chosen me to foot the bill for Tia's wedding without even telling her. I could feel the weight of it all on my shoulders. That's when I decided to take action. I had been talking to a lawyer about how to get the loan removed from my name, but the process was taking longer than expected. I had tried to deal with it quietly, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that my parents were never going to take responsibility for their actions. They were never going to admit that they had made a huge mistake, so I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go any longer. I wasn't going to let them get away with it, and I was going to make sure Tia knew what had really been happening behind the scenes. I went outside to take a breath, hoping that some fresh air would calm me down. But as I stood there, staring at the beautiful venue, I could not stop thinking about the loan and how unfair it all was. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the way my family treated me. The way they had always treated me like I was just there to help them out when they needed it. I was tired of being the one who always cleaned up their messes. It wasn't long before I saw a car pull up in front of the venue. I did not recognize it at first, but then I saw the flashing lights, a police car. My heart started to race and I could not help but smile. I knew exactly what I had to do. The plan I had been working on for days was about to come to fruition. The police officers got out of the car and started walking towards the entrance of the venue. They weren't here for anything other than what I had arranged. I had called them earlier, explaining the situation and asking them to meet me at the wedding. I knew it was going to cause a scene, but honestly, I did not care anymore. My parents needed to face the consequences of their actions. They needed to realize that they could not just take advantage of me and expect everything to be fine. As the officers walked inside, I could see my parents' faces change. They had no idea what was going on, and they were too caught up in their perfect wedding day to notice anything out of the ordinary. But when the officers approached them, their smiles faded. It did not take long before the tension in the air became palpable. My parents were in complete shock, and I could see the panic in their eyes. I stayed in the background, watching it all unfold. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to yell or scream. I had already said everything I needed to say to my parents, and now it was up to them to deal with the mess they had created. I could hear snippets of the conversation between the officers and my parents, but I did not care to listen too closely. It wasn't my job to explain everything to them. They had made this mess, and now they had to deal with the consequences. When Tia finally realized what was going on, she came rushing over to where the officers were talking to my parents. She looked confused and upset, but I could tell she wasn't truly grasping what was happening. My parents had always shielded her from the truth, and she had no idea just how much I had been suffering because of their choices. She did not even know about the loan. I watched as she tried to talk to them, but they were too wrapped up in their own panic to listen to her. The whole scene was a mess. Guests were starting to whisper and wonder what was going on. My parents were still in shock, and Tia was asking questions. But no one seemed to have the answers. I stood there feeling a mix of anger and relief. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the grand moment of triumph I had imagined in my head, but it felt like a small victory. Finally, someone was holding them accountable for the mess they had created. The wedding was essentially ruined after that. The officers eventually left, but the damage had been done. My parents' perfect day was no longer perfect. It was a disaster. And I did not feel sorry for them one bit. They needed to learn that actions have consequences. They needed to realize that they could not just keep using me to fix their problems. Now I am left with the aftermath. My parents are furious. And Tia is upset with me for making a scene at her wedding, but honestly, I do not regret it. I've spent my whole life being ignored and used by my family, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it any longer. But now I am wondering if I went too far. Did I do the right thing by calling the cops and ruining the wedding, or was I just being petty? AITA for calling the cops to ruin my sister's wedding because of the loan my parents took out in my name? Update 1. Well, it's been a few weeks since the whole disaster at Tia's wedding, and I honestly do not know where to start. The whole thing has spiraled out of control in ways I did not think possible. I've been trying to keep my head above water, but I think I need to just spill everything because I did not even know how to process it all anymore. First off, I thought the worst would be my parents cutting me off and Tia being furious. That was bad enough. But what happened after was next level. So after the wedding, I expected the usual. My parents sending angry texts, Tia giving me the silent treatment, but it did not stop there. A couple of days after everything went down, my mom, Trisha, showed up at my apartment unannounced. I did not even want to answer the door, but she kept knocking, so I figured I had no choice. When I opened the door, she did not waste any time. She started yelling right away about how I ruined Tia's life and how I was selfish for not supporting my sister. I was honestly just so tired at this point. She went on about how they sacrificed for me growing up, which I still do not understand. Sacrificed what? They put me in debt without my consent, and how this one small thing I did was going to ruin the family reputation. But here's the crazy part. She pulled out a contract. She said that she and my father had spoken to a lawyer and they had put together this legal agreement stating that I owe them money for damaging the family's reputation and costing Tia's wedding. I kid you not. They were asking me to pay for the whole wedding that I did not even agree to be a part of. I stood there stunned. They were demanding $80,000, the exact amount they took out under my name for the loan. I could not believe it. They were trying to manipulate me into paying back the loan for the wedding they threw for Tia, as if I was somehow responsible for their choices. The whole thing was honestly beyond surreal. I just could not even process it. At first, I thought maybe I was hearing things wrong, but she handed me the contract, and it was all written out. If I did not pay them back, they would take me to court for defamation and emotional damages. I stared at her, almost speechless. How was this even real? And then it got even worse. While we were talking, my dad, Marshall, called. Apparently, they were planning to confront Tia about everything that happened, except they were blaming me for ruining her life. In their minds, I had embarrassed her and caused a rift in her relationship with Jim, even though I wasn't the one hiding secrets and fraudulently taking out loans under someone else's name. But the worst part, as I was standing there trying to wrap my head around everything, Tia showed up. I did not know she was coming, but apparently she had heard my parents were trying to fix things with me. So she came over thinking that was going to be her moment of forgiveness. Instead, we had an all-out confrontation. She started shouting at me about how I ruined her dream wedding and that she would never forgive me for doing this to her. She actually said that she could not believe I'd take away her happiness because of some stupid loan. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I finally snapped. I told her that I did not ruin her wedding. They did. My parents used me as a pawn in their scheme, and she was too busy playing princess to realize that. I said that if anyone owed anyone an apology, it was her, for letting them manipulate me into this situation in the first place. I did not even know why I bothered. She didn't listen. She just kept yelling that I was being dramatic and that I should just pay the damn money and move on. I told her, no way. I am not paying for your perfect wedding, Tia. Not after all this. And then, as if the universe was adding a final punchline to all of this chaos, Jim, her fiancé, walks in. I had no idea he was even involved in this, but apparently he'd been in contact with my parents behind my back. I don't know what they talked about, but when Jim saw the scene unfolding, he did not even try to defuse it. Instead, he started yelling at me, blaming me for destroying everything and saying that I had no right to speak to Tia like that. At that point, I just lost it. I told Jim to stay out of it and that he had no idea what was really going on. I was done pretending like everything was fine, and honestly, that was the last straw for me. The whole situation made me realize how toxic everything had become. I was surrounded by people who thought they were entitled to my money, my time, and my energy, and I had nothing left to give. So after that, I left. I packed a bag, grabbed my essentials, and stayed with a friend for a while. I knew I needed space, and more importantly, I wanted to stay somewhere my family would not show up to. My parents kept texting me, demanding that I come back and talk things through, but I honestly do not know if I can ever go back to that family dynamic. It feels like too much has been broken. I'm still figuring out what to do next. Do I take legal action? Do I let them drag me through the mud? I don't know. But right now, I'm just focusing on myself. I need to rebuild and find some peace because I haven't had it in a long time. So that's where I am now. Everything is a mess and I have no idea how it will all turn out in the end. Update 2. After everything that happened at Tia's wedding, I thought the situation could not get any worse. I was wrong. It's like my parents and Tia have made it their mission to make my life as miserable as possible. Every time I think things might calm down, they find a new way to escalate the drama. A few days ago, I got a call from my bank. They said there had been an attempt to access my online banking account. At first, I assumed it was a phishing scam or some random mistake, but then they told me someone had tried to transfer a large sum of money from my account straight to my parents. My stomach dropped. I could not believe what I was hearing. The bank flagged the transfer as suspicious, so it did not go through. But the fact that someone tried this at all was shocking. When I asked how this could have happened, the bank explained that whoever made the attempt had access to some of my personal information. And that's when it hit me. It had to be my parents. Because of the loan they took out in my name, my parents already had access to a lot of my information. I felt sick. It was one thing for them to burden me with debt for Tia's wedding, but now they were trying to steal money directly from my account? I called my mom, Trisha, to confront her about it. She acted completely clueless, saying she had no idea what I was talking about. Her voice, though, gave her away. It was shaky and defensive. She kept saying things like, "Why would we do that to you?" And "You must be mistaken." But then she made a comment that tipped her hand. She said this would not have happened if I had just agreed to pay off the loan. That was it for me. I hung up and contacted my bank's fraud department to report the attempt. Then I called my lawyer. I had been hesitant to take legal action before, thinking it might ruin our relationship for good. But after this, I did not care anymore. They weren't going to stop until I did something to protect myself. As if that wasn't enough, Tia decided to jump back into the mess. She emailed me out of the blue, accusing me of ruining her life. According to her, I was the reason her wedding was ruined. Her relationship with Jim was falling apart and everything else in her life was going wrong. She said I was jealous of her and her perfect life and wanted to see her fail. At the end of the email, she made a threat. She said that if I did not fix things, she would tell everyone some big secret about me. I have no idea what she's talking about because I do not have any dark secrets, but I would not put it past her to make something up. That's just how she is. She'll do whatever it takes to make herself look like the victim. And then came the biggest bombshell. Jim broke up with Tia. I do not know all the details, but from what I've heard, he started asking more questions about their finances after the wedding drama. I'm guessing he found out about the loan my parents took out, or maybe just could not handle all the chaos. Whatever the reason, he decided he did not want to stay with Tia anymore. Now, of course, Tia's blaming me for that too. She says that if I hadn't caused problems at the wedding, Jim would not have started questioning things. She's been telling anyone who listened that I destroyed her happiness. Meanwhile, my parents are still fully on her side. They've been calling and texting me nonstop, alternating between fake apologies and guilt trips. They say things like, "You're tearing this family apart, and how can you live with yourself after what you've done to Tia?" It's exhausting. I blocked Tia on social media because she kept posting things about me, accusing me of being a toxic sibling, calling me selfish. She even hinted that I was trying to sabotage her life out of spite. It was all too much, so I cut her off completely. My parents, though, are harder to block out. They have started showing up at my apartment unannounced. I do not answer the door when they come, but it's unnerving to know that they're just outside. I've been considering getting a restraining order, but I'm not sure if that's going too far. The only good thing is that my lawyer says I have a strong case against my parents for the fraudulent loan. I've also been considering filing a police report about the attempted bank transfer. Part of me feels guilty for even thinking about taking legal action against my own family, but they have left me with no choice. This whole situation has been a nightmare. I feel like I'm constantly on edge, waiting for the next terrible thing to happen. I've started having trouble sleeping and my anxiety is through the roof. At the same time, I'm starting to feel a little stronger. I know now that I can't keep letting my family walk all over me. They have shown me who they really are, and it's clear they do not have my best interests at heart. Still, it's hard to come to terms with the fact that my own parents and sister are willing to hurt me like this. I keep wondering if there's something I could have done differently to avoid all of this. Maybe if I had been more forgiving or more patient, things would not have gotten this bad. But then I remember that none of this is my fault. I did not ask for them to take out a loan in my name or try to steal money from me. I did not ruin Tia's wedding. She and my parents did that all on their own. Right now, I'm just trying to focus on protecting myself. I've stopped responding to their calls and messages, and I am working with my lawyer to figure out my next steps. I know this isn't over though. My family isn't the type to back down quietly. At this point, I do not even know what fixing things would look like. My parents seem to think that I should just drop everything and pay off the loan, but that's not going to happen. I do not owe them anything, and I am not going to let them manipulate me into thinking otherwise. I feel like I'm caught in the middle of a storm and I do not know how it's going to end. Am I doing the right thing by standing my ground, or am I making things worse by refusing to back down? Update 3. It's been a few months and things have finally settled. A lot has happened since my last post, and while it hasn't been easy, I can finally say I am in a better place. After my parents tried to steal money from my bank account, I decided to file a police report. It wasn't an easy decision because no matter what they have done, they're still my family. But I knew I could not let them keep walking all over me. The police investigated and confirmed my parents were behind the attempted transfer. That, combined with the fraudulent loan, gave me enough to move forward legally. I worked with my lawyer and the court ruled in my favor. The $80,000 loan was officially declared fraudulent, and I am no longer responsible for it. My parents now have to pay it back themselves. It's a huge weight off my shoulders, but it came at a cost. My relationship with them is completely destroyed. My parents, Trisha and Marshall, have stopped contacting me. I think they finally realized they could not bully me anymore. Instead, they have turned to play the victims, telling anyone who will listen that I betrayed them. I know the truth, though, and that's what matters. Tia did not take any of this well. After Jim broke off their marriage, she spiraled. She blames me for everything that's gone wrong in her life, from the wedding drama to her financial struggles. From what I've heard, she's moved back in with my parents and isn't doing well. She's still trying to badmouth me on social media, but I've blocked her everywhere. I am done dealing with her toxic behavior. The hardest part of all this has been accepting that I've lost my family. For years, I hoped they'd change, but they have shown me who they really are. It hurts to let go, but I know it's the right thing to do. Sometimes even family can be toxic, and you have to put yourself first. I've been focusing on rebuilding my life. Therapy has been a huge help, giving me a space to process everything that's happened. I've also leaned on my friends, who've been an amazing source of support. They have reminded me what real, healthy relationships look like. Now, I'm looking forward to a fresh start. For the first time in years, I'm not living under my family's control or dealing with their constant drama. It feels freeing, even if it's bittersweet. Thank you to everyone who supported me through this. Your kindness and advice gave me strength when I needed it most. Am I sad about losing my family? Yes. But do I feel like I'm finally moving in the right direction? Absolutely. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.